Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Caregiving Gen X Style. I'm Steve Mullen.
And I'm Jennifer Mullen.
We have talked a lot about making sure you have the help you need as a caregiver because it's so hard to do this job alone.
Yes.
In this episode, we're going to talk with a guest who knows a ton of places to find help, and she's going to help us be a little less alone in our caregiving journey. But first, Jennifer, how is your mom?
Goggy's doing very well, but actually, I'm not really going to give a Goggy update today. I will say she's had a lot of doctor's appointments lately. Nothing, major. She's had a lot of doctor's appointments, but actually I'm really not going to get into that because that spurred an idea for a whole separate episode, which is what I think
it'll be coming down the road.
Yeah, might be our next episode. So instead, I'm actually going to talk about your mom, Steve, aka Nana, because you had the opportunity to be out of town last week at the last minute.
Last minute golf trip.
Yes, it was wonderful. One of our friends invited you. One of our friends and listeners of the show.
True. They do listen.
Yes, invited you to go. So I'm glad you had the opportunity to do that. And of course, one of the things is you had to make the decision very quickly about whether or not you could go. And of course, one of the things was, well, what about my mom? And I said, I will go see your mom, which I did in the middle of the week last week. And of course, it was great to see her. Took her some flowers to cheer up her apartment a little bit. And we sat and had a lovely chat. But it was really funny because I was there for, about an hour, maybe a little tiny bit less until it was time to take her up to the dining room for dinner. And
at 4:30.
At 4:45.
Yeah.
But yeah, still very early.
Quite.
But man, did I get a lot.
You got the download.
I got a lot of information about all the happenings at the assisted living. It was so. We start chatting and she starts telling me one thing. And by the way, like your mom, she does what she always does, right? Like there usually are very few greetings. There's really not like, hello, how are you? It's just like she just starts in the middle of the conversation. So, she starts talking and I'm asking her questions. And then I get to like the third thing she's updating me on. I was like, oh, I gotta do something with this. So, as you know, and as our children know, when I got home from that visit, I sat down. Now, mind you, I think it was my third night at home, totally alone. So yes, I had some time on my hands and I wrote up what I thought was a very funny update of tales from the assisted living facility. And I sent it in the family group chat. Of course, our daughter, not shocking to anybody who knows her first response was, wow, did you write that? You got a lot of time on your hands.
Yep.
But I had some fun with it. I turned it into a little story.
Right.
It was almost like a little soap opera.
I was on a golf trip with 19 other guys and really didn't have a chance to give it quite the attention that it probably deserved.
You did not. We had to talk about that when you got home.
You'll be all right.
We had to talk about
You'll be fine.
How funny your wife is.
You're hysterical.
I am.
Hysterical.
I can be very funny.
Okay.
Well, anyway, so I enjoyed seeing your mom last week. It was nice to visit with her.
And thank you for doing that. She appreciated it.
We had a lovely visit. So I guess I'm supposed to say, Steve, how's your mom?
Well, actually, my how's your mom is not about my mom.
Right.
It's really about
we really mix things up
somebody
here tonight.
else's mom. So a couple of episodes ago, I talked about Nita. Now, Nita was a resident at the assisted living and has now passed away. Nita's was 101 years old.
Yeah.
Had quite the life.
She had a good run.
She had a good run.
We
for
talked
sure.
about it, right?
We did
Ray,
talk about that. If you listened to 2 episodes ago, you know what we're talking about.
She had a good run.
Really one of the best runs. And, she outlived her husband by 70 years.
Yeah.
She outlived one of her sons. And I think really what happened, and again, I don't have all the details, but just based on what my mother has told me.
Really? You don't have, that is shocking to me. Actually,
I've got all the details.
Don't have all the details.
I have all the details that my mother has. Let's put it that way.
All
Every
right.
detail she has, I have it now. But I think it sounds like she just kind of was tired and maybe gave up. And I am a big believer that, older people, sometimes you can just decide when it's time and you give up.
Yeah.
And that happened with my father.
Yeah. I don't even know. Give up. I'm not even sure. If you're 101 years old, I'm not even sure. Right.
You're
exactly.
Just tired.
I just think she was probably tired.
Right. So rest in peace, Nita. There was actually another person that passed away in the assisted living the same week. And there was an obituary or a little in memoriam thing written up about her from her daughter. And man, did this woman have a life.
Yeah.
She went to Penn State University. She had a undergrad and 2 masters. She lived in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Oregon, California, and someplace in between.
I thought you said Hawaii, too.
Hawaii,
maybe.
I believe, but she also lived overseas in Japan. She's all over the place. She was in India for a while because apparently she was in Tasmania and discovered kind of Indian religion and decided she wanted to go to India and learn all about enlightenment.
She did a version of like Eat, Pray, Love.
I guess. I've never seen that movie.
Love. It's a
Why
book
would I?
First.
Or the book, for that matter. But anyway, she had a heck of a life. And I remember seeing this woman in the assisted living. Mom and I would be outside enjoying the sun, and a CNA would roll her out to go take her to dinner. And she had Alzheimer's, as it turns out. So when I met her, she was not at all with it. And I did actually speak to her once, and she was not at all with it. But, the CNA would roll her out. She'd have her feet up in the wheelchair, her arms out to the side going, wee!
Good for her.
So she was having a good time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I recognize that you're saying she had Alzheimer's, but she would have been, remember we did an episode, I don't know how long ago it's been now, but like doing the video story with your loved one. Sounds like she would have been.
Before she got too far into it, that would have been one heck of a story to hear.
Great story to record for sure.
So, I guess wrapping this all up, you meet people in these assisted living facilities and you don't know their backstories. Jennifer and I are big on backstories.
We do like
We've given them door cats.
Yes.
And
we've given it to George.
We've given it to George.
Our mascot, George.
Yes,
He's
our mascot,
sitting right
George.
here with us. Yes.
And these are not just old people sitting in an assisted living. A lot of them have had just absolutely fascinating lives. Mm-hmm. And hopefully you can get to know them while they're still able to tell you the stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So, all right, let's get into our episode. As we said earlier, it is so hard to be a caregiver if you do not have help. That help can be from other family members, friends, or some kind of advisor or another, but those people may not know the answers to some of the questions you have. In this episode, we're going to try to point you towards some of those answers.
So our guest for this episode is Nicole Smith, and she's going to be a veritable font of information.
You like that veritable font?
That was really good in the copious notes.
Thank you.
That was really good phrasing.
Thank you,
Steve. Yes, very proud of you. But Nicole is an author of a book about elder care planning and crisis management, primarily for dementia caregivers. She's also a certified senior advisor, and finally, she's a caregiver for both of her parents and a step-parent. Whew, that is a lot on your plate, Nicole. Welcome to Caregiving Gen X Style.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
We are very happy to have you. So before we go any further, we want to thank you for being the person who made us aware that our podcast was mentioned in AARP magazine. If it were not for you, we may never have learned where our crazy spikes in traffic were coming from.
And they have been crazy.
Yeah, Steve,
we would have been completely clueless. Why are all these new people finding us?
Steve's always looking at the download stats. And so thank you for bringing it up. And I think we talked about it on the last episode when your email first came through. We were like, what is this really about? But oh my gosh, so exciting. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Very cool. I'm excited for you too.
Yeah, we're very, and I have to say this, I know I said it on the last episode, but still I'm convinced it's going to happen with Rob Lowe on the cover. Like it could not have been any more perfect for us to be in that particular edition. And
have you gotten a call from him yet?
Not yet, but I do feel certain.
Do you think he might text you?
It's coming. I mean, he might. He might. Yeah,
yeah,
I feel certain it's on the way. So, yeah. So, Nicole, let's start with this. We always make sure that we ask our guests, how are your parents?
Well, thank you. My mother lives near me in memory care, and I see her about 3 or 4 times a week. So she's pretty good. We have some med issues we're trying to work out because she's very anxious and agitated lately. So trying to figure that out. And then my dad and stepmother live in Iowa, and they live in their home. My dad had surgery for normal pressure hydrocephalus a couple years. He's doing well. And my stepmom has aphasia, and she's on a very steady decline. And I think maybe in the next couple months, she's going to be moving into memory care. He's been researching all of that and needs a little bit of respite. And so that's kind of the trajectory we're on. But I just kind of let him call the shots, and I talk to him every other day or so.
Sure. Wow. Aphasia. I mean, of course, I think that's kind of risen in people's awareness from Bruce Willis, right? That's what he suffers from. So that is,
That's a rough one.
wow, that is a really rough one.
Yeah, and she's really young. Yeah, so.
How young are we talking?
Well, she's just turned 74.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty young.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book. Tell us about your book, the name of it, and what led you to write it.
Thank you. The book is called Diagnosis Dementia, Your Guide for Elder Care Planning and Crisis Management. So about 5 years when we started our cross-country craziness of caregiving, I could not find a book that I thought would help me. There's the 36-Hour Day, which is a giant book written by a physician that's very good.
We have talked about that one with a guest before.
Yeah,
Yes, for sure. That's a big one. Everybody needs to read it if you were dealing with dementia of any kind.
Yeah, and it's written by a physician and it's been out for 20 years. It's really good, but I needed something, a resource manual, something I could turn to for the legal, the financial, the medical. And I was dealing with 3 different states, and the laws and everything is so very different depending on where you live. And I didn't know what I was up against. And so I just started listening to podcasts, watching movies, reading some books, and talking to people. And I felt like there were a lot of resources out there intermittently, but it was hard to navigate through all that. And it was overwhelming with all the decisions and the emotion. And so I started just kind of creating a giant document tracking the ones that I found helpful with the links and such articles. And then there were times when I wasn't able to talk to my mom when she was in the behavioral health and different things. So I was writing all the time, and on the plane flights, I was writing just to process all of my emotions and also to kind of create a chronological track of everything that was going on.
Wow. And the fact that you were dealing with some of this cross country and across multiple states, we certainly have talked about that in other episodes. That definitely adds a very complex layer to caregiving.
Well, it's hard enough when they're 15 minutes down the road, but when they're 15 states away or whatever.
Yep. 3,000 miles. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. Well, Nicole, share with us, how does someone become a certified senior advisor? Because that's what you are. So how do you go about doing that? And then how do you help people in your role?
Yeah, I'm not even sure when I first discovered the CSA, but I was intrigued immediately. And as I started talking to people as I was going through all this, some of the experts in the field, they're like, you know a lot. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm continuing to learn through reading, but also through my experience. And then I found out about the conference, the Certified Senior Advisor Conference they have every year. And I live in Arizona, and it was in Phoenix last year. So I just drove up the road and attended the conference. And I had heard about how to become one. And basically what it is they send you about 6 workbooks that cover all kinds of stuff. And then you can attend a 3-day class in person, or you can do it virtually, and then you take an exam at the end. So the books they cover all kinds of stuff, from Social Security to Medicare to senior living to dementia to finances to taxes to veterans benefits. Like it's like a giant overview of everything related to seniors. And I learned a lot. And a lot of the people in the class, I went to the class in person, are realtors or financial planners or sometimes social workers that want an additional certification that shows that they have a special understanding of seniors and everything that relates to them.
And if one of our listeners wanted to try to find a CSA, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, they're on the website is csa.us, and there's a locator on there where you can look up certified senior advisors in your state and contact them. So that's one way to find them.
So let's talk about different scenarios and how we can find help with them. Our first scenario, let's imagine, if you will, we're going to paint a picture here. You discover your parents' finances are completely messed up. They have a ton of credit card debt. Bills haven't been paid. Maybe collectors are starting to call. It's obviously overwhelming to get control of this. Where can you find help?
Well, I would start with finding out if you have power of attorney for finance, because that's very important. And you really are not going to be able to do anything unless you have that. But if you don't have that, I would start calling the credit card companies. First of all, just taking inventory of everything that is in arrears or is problematic, and kind of figure out where you are. So take inventory of where you are, and then start to piece together through phone calls, maybe through a credit card or a mortgage, you can get a forbearance, start calling customer service, start explaining. But the thing that I always tell people is you need to get your documents done for yourself, your parents, and any children over 18. Because if you don't have a power of attorney for finance and a power of attorney for medical decisions, you're going to have a hard time, because all of these institutions, banks especially, are fighting fraud, and they are not going to help you. They're not going to talk to you. So that would be my first piece of advice for people to do. But if you don't have that, I would say, take inventory, start calling, and start figuring out how you might be able to work through this, because sometimes the customer service calls are voice activated. And if the person, your mom or whoever is on with you, they can say, yeah, okay, I give permission for my daughter to help me on this. And if they've still got capacity and they're cognitively sound, then they can help you navigate all this and have the power to make changes. But a lot of times elders in this generation, they're very private. I mean, they've grown up being private about their finances, their health, and their savings and all that stuff. So it's more than just wading through the paperwork. There's a lot of conversations that need to happen. There's a lot of pride and privacy and embarrassment. So it's a large issue. You might want to find a counselor or a mediator or somebody too.
Well, let's talk about those mediators, because I'm thinking, if worse comes to worse, how do you go about getting someone to kind of be that mediator?
Well, I found great help from an elder law attorney. So yes, it can be expensive, but they know their stuff, and they can help you find the documents or get the documents that you need. Because even if you've got a diagnosis of dementia, it's not shut the door. It's a very gray area. And elder law varies considerably by state. So you need to talk to somebody in your state. Also, every county across the U.S. has an area agency on aging. It's called a AAA.
Right.
And
we've talked about that. People don't know about that.
Correct. But they are, and some are better than others. It depends on their funding and things like that. But they have all kinds of resources. They can help you with Memory Cafe. They can help you with finding elder law attorneys. They can help you with paperwork. They can help you with Social Security, Medicare. Like they offer classes. They offer appointments. That's an incredible resource that people should look into.
It's funny though, you were mentioning how some of these credit card companies, they will ask, well, is your mother right here with us? Can she give permission? I've always wondered, how could they possibly know that the person giving permission is actually your mother?
Well,
I think we had somebody on our show, or maybe it was a listener that emailed in or whatnot and said, I've gotten really good at impersonating my mother for these calls.
Wow. I wouldn't even think to do that, though.
I can't do it, obviously.
Here's what I do.
My voice sounds nothing like my mother's.
I've definitely come across this before, where I've been trying to handle something for my mom, and they, of course, need her on the line.
Yes, I give permission.
No, I just conference her in. I know how to conference her in.
Seriously, I just wonder, how could they possibly know?
I know, I guess. So.
Well, I'm not a tech person, and I don't know about like the tech or the voice recognition software. I've no idea if that's deployed or even reliable or anything. I don't know.
I really don't think, I don't know how they could use that, because they don't have a voice imprint from my mother or Jennifer's mother or your mother. They don't have a voice imprint. They're just looking for some older sounding person to say yes.
Right. Well, yeah, right. I don't even know how much they're listening for, like what their voice sounds like. Because you know what?
Yes, you can.
Well, if you talk to either your mom or my mom on the phone, I don't think they sound like they're 85 years old.
Not really, no.
Right. Yeah.
No.
But Nicole, I think you touched on, before we wrap up this scenario, I do think you touched on something. I mean, we have definitely talked in the past about the importance of, power of attorney, and that can be a little bit of a challenging conversation, I think, sometimes, because I think you mentioned, right, like the generation of our parents or older loved ones is, just a lot of privacy, and you don't talk about things like money and, whatever else. These are not necessarily open conversations. So then to sort of, request from your loved one, because you do have to get their signature and get things notarized, I think that can probably be challenging for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I advocate for having the conversations early and often, because it's not like you want to just be at the Thanksgiving table and say, hey, can I have power of attorney? And let's talk about your funeral plans. Right. So, and then, add some siblings into the mix and it can get ugly real fast. Right. So, why are you asking dad for power of attorney? Are you trying to get all his money? What's going on? So, if you have siblings, you can maybe approach it together in a loving way, make a visit. We want to use we language. We want to help you through this. We want to work through this together. We want what's best for you, and we want to know what you want, because it's better than trying to guess. I had that with my dad. Like when everything was going through my mom first, she had all of her documents and stuff, which was a different issue. But then I turned to my dad. I was like, hey, you've got all your stuff, right? Your power of attorney, your will, your trust. He's like, well, no, I don't trust lawyers. Why would I do that? I'm like,
right.
Wow.
So it took me over almost like 15, 18 months to get him to do all that.
Well, we even had this issue with our daughter. So she went off to school. She graduated high school in the spring of 2020 when the whole world shut down. She went off to college in the fall of 2020, and we'd gotten advice, make sure you have medical power of attorney for her because, she's over 18. If she ends up in the hospital with a really nasty case of COVID, the doctors may not tell you what's going on because she's an adult. So we brought it up to her and she said, well, why do you want that?
Yeah, she was a little resistant.
She really pushed back. She said, well, does this mean you're going to be able to see what's going on with all my medications? I'm like, honey, we already know what you're on. So what's the problem? Exactly. She was, she was really...
Well, she was a young adult, right, about to start her life of independence and sort of she wanted to do the very classic, like, I am an adult and I need to step away now and you don't need to be in the middle of all this stuff. She doesn't actually really mean that, by the way, like, because she's still, whatever.
But, well, we finally, we put her on the phone with the lawyer and he said, okay, here's the deal. This is not permanent. You can revoke this whenever you want. If your parents start getting all up in your business too much, then you can revoke it. And I think that's what finally did it for her. It was just kind of funny. I mean, we always hear about power of attorney with older people and they push back. This was our 18-year-old daughter at the time.
Sandwich generation, though, right? We're dealing with power of attorney for elderly folks. Right. And then for the, she's not 18 anymore, but the 18-year-old. So,
and I've said it on the show before, my mother actually designated me as her power of attorney right after my father died. And she said it at the time. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I don't know what I'm going to do with this.
That was
but
20
it was
plus
really
years ago. Yeah.
The smartest piece of advice she ever got.
Yeah.
Because I've used it so much.
Yes. Okay. All right. Let's move on to our next scenario. And it's fairly common for people who live with their elderly loved one and are caring for them 24/7. Where is the best place to look for respite help? So you can do something for yourself, like, even if it's not a fun something for yourself, but you need to go to a doctor's appointment. Where do you look for that kind of assistance?
Oh, a lot of towns and communities are now offering some kind of an adult day. They call it adult daycare. And those are sometimes run by a church or the Y or some community. And it's a place where you can take your loved one. Of course, you have to do a tour and an intake and all that stuff, but you can take them temporarily for a few hours and then go do what you need to do. Like my dad I've watched him gradually start to use more resources as things have gotten more difficult with my stepmother. And she goes every Tuesday for several hours to an adult day program in their town. And then my dad will run out and do what he needs to do. And they did try another one too, but she didn't like that one as well. So they dropped that one. So that's one option. There's also respite that you can actually drop your loved one off for like a week or two. It's very expensive, and it's usually that I've found through a senior living community where they have rooms put aside for respite, and in the hopes that you'll get to try out their community and then maybe move in there. But again, it's expensive, and also you have to go through an intake and an interview, and if you've got certain health issues, that's going to affect things. So, but there needs to be more respite. But that's why you have to build your support group.
Is that type of respite care where you're talking about dropping them off somewhere? Is that something that's typically covered by insurance or no? Is that an out-of-pocket expense?
Private pay. Private
It's out of pocket.
What you're talking about, for instance, an assisted living facility. But what about the town stuff you were talking about before?
The adult daycare is a lot of times that's kind of provided by the community or the church or whatever. I don't think there might be a nominal fee, but yeah, respite, as far as I know, it's just not readily available too much, and it's not cheap. So
right, and I've seen that at my mother's assisted living. There was a woman, there was an older gentleman who walked by us outside a couple of times, and I got to talking about him. Turns out his wife had just had surgery and was doing that at the assisted living, which again, horrifically expensive, I'm quite sure, for the month that she was there. And I did kind of wonder why she wasn't in skilled nursing and rehab, but maybe that's just not what they wanted.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot going on. There was a guy that moved into my mother's memory care because his wife had this giant cruise with her family booked. And I think she just, she wanted to go on this cruise. And so he literally moved in, and then there was all kinds of family dynamic stuff going on. And then a month later he moved out. So it's crazy.
There's lots of complications with the respite care. What if your loved one, what if you can't easily get them somewhere else? Is there respite care, in the home? I mean, I'm going to guess maybe that's potentially hiring a private nurse to come in for the day, or there are some other types of services?
Yeah, I think for that kind of stuff, it's using the care.com, the home care, home health, and those types of things. I mean, that's the problem, is all this stuff is private pay and figuring it out on your own and piecing it together. And then, but if you do have a medical issue, that's when you can get some PT, OT, and some stuff coming in front that's paid for by Medicare. I mean, there's also the PACE program, which is all these acronyms. It's the Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly. So that is kind of like a nursing home care, healthcare in the community at home. And these people have to qualify. It's like a Medicare/Medicaid thing, medically necessary care, and you have to be 55 and older. And again, qualify and go through the process. And that's another resource where they try to keep people in their homes if they can with this PACE Medicare service.
So is that something that's available pretty universally in communities?
It's government, so but I looked up Arizona and we have none. But I think, also it's all the government bureaucracy, right? So I think that Arizona, was the last state to accept a Medicaid policy way back when or something. And so we have kind of a separate system. So again, it's very critical to figure out what's available in your state. But there are a lot of government, federal plus state funded government programs. And then for the PACE program, it's npaonline.org.
npaonline.org. So maybe we can include that.
Yeah. So that, again.
But can I just say how crazy I think it is that there is not that service in Arizona. Like, listen, people
There's a
don't
lot of
go
old people
retire
there.
in Nebraska. I
Right.
get that, right?
We have nothing against our friends in Nebraska.
Nothing against our friends
It's
in
not
Nebraska.
a big retirement
Not
area,
a big
though.
retirement place, but I'm like, Arizona, really?
Well, like I said, like I just kind of plugged it in to check it out. But I think, if I have to go down the rabbit hole, I would go to the Area Agency on Aging. I would start, asking them, because there's a million acronyms, and every state has their own system, their own acronyms, their own access, their own qualifications. So it's not easy. None of it's easy. And it requires you to do your due diligence and ask the questions and make the calls. And it's not easy.
It should be easy, but it's not easy.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Our next scenario involves burnout, something all caregivers are familiar with. Where can you go if you get so low and maybe even depressed that you don't know how you're going to possibly make it through another day of taking care of an elderly loved one? What do you do?
Eat chocolate.
Eat chocolate. That's not bad advice.
Or drink Prosecco.
Or drink
Yes.
Prosecco.
Or beer, in
the-
my case,
Or
drink
beer.
beer.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
drinking a beer right now, in fact.
Yay. Again, my advice would be to start to build your support network early, which I did. And you've got someone you can talk to, someone you can cry to, someone you can vent to. But there are a lot of virtual programs available, support groups, peer support groups. Lisa's Care Connection, what's her name? Lisa Gibbons, that was on Dancing with the Stars and all that. She has a giant caregiver network.
Wasn't she on Entertainment Tonight?
Yeah, I think that's who it was. Yeah. So she,
Right.
yeah,
She was
yes.
the one with the legs under the table that you always saw her very long legs.
Which she used at Dancing with the Stars,
Yes,
right?
there you go.
I think she was 50 when she did that, whatever. So she's very lovely. She has this extensive network, and now Seth Rogen is in on the game with Hilarity for Charity because his wife was a caregiver when she was very young. So they're trying to educate the youth. And then my personal favorite, of course, is daughterhood.org. And it was started about a decade ago by Ann Tomlinson, who is very involved in everything Medicare, Medicaid, DC in her profession, but she's also been a caregiver, and she saw a need for more caregiver support groups. And so with COVID, of course, everything shifted online, and now they've become a 501c3, and there's caregiving Zoom calls free all month long on daughterhood.org. So
That's great.
Yeah, you sign up, you Zoom in, and there's two types. So one is called a caregiving circle, where you just kind of Zoom in and talk and cry and share. And then the other one is a topic circle, where we'll have an expert talk about caregiving 101, Medicare 101, elder law 101, dementia 101, grief 101. So there's all these specialists.
This is fantastic.
This is
It's
amazing.
amazing.
Everybody
It's
needs to go
amazing.
look into this.
Daughterhood.org. Yeah. So there's no charge. You just Zoom in. And then the cool thing, so I've been on a lot of these calls. I facilitate one of the calls a month. And it's mostly women, but men are welcome, sons are welcome, spouses are welcome.
Well, I hope we're
And-
welcome.
Yes, of course. But it's called Daughterhood because she's a daughter and she started it, so she got to name it. So anyway, but it's really the best thing to see is when you've got a dozen women on there and somebody's having a real hard time, right? They're in a crisis situation, they're sad, whatever. And one of the other daughters, I'm going to start crying. One of the other daughters can help them because hey, I've been there. I hear you. I see you. I get you. Mm-hmm. This is what I did. Try, and then everyone starts chiming in. So it is, because then instead of being this down and out, burnt out caregiver, you feel empowered and you're like, hey, I helped someone else. We're all in this together. And it's incredible. It happens every time.
That's awesome. And I will say that is one of the things that I think motivates Steve and I to keep doing what we're doing with this podcast, because of some of the feedback that we've gotten from listeners who say, listen, my situation is a little bit different, whatever. It's not exactly like either of yours, but it's just so nice to know that I am not alone in what I'm doing. And it is right. It's amazing. We all need sort of community for whatever the issue might be that we are dealing with, right? I mean, it's shoot, when you have kids, you have moms groups, and you have moms groups for a reason, right? Every single kid is different and everybody deals with different issues. You just want to know that you are not the only person on the face of the planet who is not getting sleep every night. It makes you feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also tell people, go to your faith community, because especially with this generation, they have a faith community, a very strong faith community, regardless of what type of faith you practice. But it's very, there's so many people there that want to help each other and support each other. So my dad, again, with my stepmom, he started organizing different women, friends of hers from the church and from different things, to come and pick her up for lunch a couple times a week. Mm-hmm. So she gets out, she has lunch, they have a great time, and he feels, she's being entertained. He gets a little break. So, but he orchestrated that and facilitated that. And they are part of a very active church group that they enjoy. And again, they can go to church together, and people at church know what's going on, but she's comfortable there. She's not, stared at or, whatever. It's a very warm and welcoming community. And a lot of these older adults have a good faith community that you can rely on if you ask. You've just got to reach out. You've got to just ask.
Yep. You find your community wherever you can, definitely. So, all right, well, let's change gears a little bit. Your book talks about crisis management. We've talked on this show about being in the good old days, when you're caregiving, and that's a reference to
The Office.
I started to say Parks and Rec. That's the other show.
We had a whole episode called The Good Old Days. It started out with a quote from The Office.
Andy, you got to know when you're in the good old days. But, this is, when your caregiving journey is a little easier and, just everything seems to be working, and it is very important to maybe sometimes stop and remind yourself, like, things are going pretty good right now, kind of the knock on wood. What do you suggest, Nicole, that we should be doing during those simpler times to ensure that we're then ready for the next crisis?
Yeah, I always talk about, even to my kids, I was like, ride the wave, baby, ride the wave.
Yep.
Well, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you can go. So if you are in desperate need of a massage or a girls' night out or a movie or some kind of respite, and things are kind of in a calmer pattern, then go take advantage of that now, because, tomorrow that might not be there. So
it's so true.
Yep.
Yeah. So if, run out and, like I said, get a massage, go grab a coffee and read a book, or take a walk and listen to a podcast or something. So just
listen to our podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. No, seize the moment and do something for you. Just take that time and do something for you, because it's going to energize you, and you're in a good place to benefit from that. The other thing you can do is always kind of be planning ahead. Like, I am constantly going to conferences, listening to podcasts, reading, jumping on calls, because I enjoy learning more about this, and I'm in it 3 different ways constantly, and with the sandwich thing with kids. So I just feel like there's always something I want to read. Like I think I mentioned, I've got Dementia Book Review as my Instagram, and I'm always reading dementia books or aging books or end of life books or longevity books, because I'm just consumed by the subject, which I enjoy, but I learn more as I go, and I also am able to share it with others.
So, basically it's a lot about sort of being in the present moment and doing your best to recognize that you are maybe in a period of time where it's a little quieter, and you 100% need to seize the day, basically, right?
Right. And always tell yourself you're doing your best. You're doing your best. You're doing your best. This is hard. You're not alone. There's 50 million caregivers out there. 50 million. So you're definitely not, like, if you throw a rock and hit someone in the grocery store, they're a caregiver, or they're about to be a caregiver. Or the hard part is you don't really know it until you're in it. And then you're like, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I like you referencing to, like, tell yourself that you're doing your best. I am thinking back, we talked about this on a previous episode with one of our very best friends who had a situation with her dad, and she and her sister, had done some things, and he was in a facility, and they had to do some cleanup of his house. And then when he got home, he had a lot of complaints about things that had been cleaned up around the house and tossed out. And, and our friend Corey, like, right from the outset, her mantra was just, I'm sorry you feel that way, but like I've done the best that I can do. And I think that's important for you to say that inwardly too, right? Like you say it to the person who maybe is having complaints about how you've done things, but you got to say it to yourself too. I am doing the best that I can do. And that's all I can do.
Right. And just eliminate the toxic people. Like
Yep.
I told you, I shut my sister out for like 2 years out of everything, blocked her from absolutely everything because she was not helping.
Wow.
Not helping. And that was what she said. Like, you're not doing this right. And I'm like, well, are you going to do it? Well, no. Oh, okay. Well, then step aside.
Right.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
So-
We had a whole episode about siblings and
Oh, we
did.
Oof, wow.
We
We
did.
could have talked a long time about that too.
Yeah. But I will say my stepsister, my oldest stepsister, she stepped in and she was able to help, which was great. But through the entire thing, my rock, I'm going to cry again. My rock was my Aunt Nancy. So she is my mom's older sister and she is a dynamo and she's a nurse. And I mean, I was talking to her almost daily, every other day. We were both flying back and forth. She was on the East Coast as well. We were taking turns. She was talking to the doctors. We still are thick as thieves with all this. So, I mean, in a positive, I'm much, much, much closer to my aunt. Like she's almost now, like my mother because
Right.
so we were always a close, giant Catholic family. But now, I mean, she's my mother, my aunt, my mother. And I even had conversations with her kids because I was like, hey, I'm sorry that she's so involved and I'm not. And they're like, yeah, this is not her problem. This is your problem. I'm like, I know, but I need help. And I have good relationships with them and it all worked out fine. And they knew that I wasn't just like, dropping the ball and be like, okay. So I'm very much richer from a more robust relationship with her.
I think everyone needs an Aunt Nancy.
Well,
Oh,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
I wish I had an Aunt Nancy.
Exactly.
I don't have one.
And, I love too that you've got the positive attitude of looking for the positive wherever you can find it because you have to. If we've
I'm
said
not
that,
very good about that.
I know you're not.
I know.
Often you're not, but
Yeah.
we've said before, like if you can't laugh, you're just going to cry. If you can't find the positives in this entire journey,
You're going to be horrifically depressed.
exactly
Most of the time.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so you focus on your book primarily on dementia caregiving, and neither Jennifer or I are in that particular caregiving world, although, longtime listeners know that we've had a bit of a taste of it with my mother, but what are some planning tips that are specific to dementia caregiving that you wrote about in your book?
Yeah, my biggest thing is just pay attention. Like we missed all the signs because I didn't know anything about dementia. I wasn't expecting dementia. I just pay attention to your parents. So be in touch with your parents, visit your parents. If something in your gut tells you that's weird or that's off or that's abnormal for her or for him, then that could be a warning sign. And also just be aware age is the biggest risk factor for dementia. It's not genetics or any of that. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but so by the time you're in your mid 80s, like 1 in 3 people have dementia and 1 in 3 people are caring for someone with dementia. 10% of people over 65 have some inklings of dementia. So
Wow.
So I mean, it's out there, but again, there's different kinds of dementia. It's not just memory loss. It could be behavior. It could be mood. It could be executive function. There's a bunch of different kinds of dementia is the umbrella term. So you've got Alzheimer's, you've got Lewy body, you've got Parkinson's, you've got frontal temporal, you've got vascular, you've got mixed dementia. So again, I'm not a neurologist or a doctor, but make sure your parents go to their preventive well checks. And then the other problem is a lot of primary care physicians you'll say, oh, no, honey, that's okay. You're just forgetful. It's fine. So forgetting certain things is normal as we go older. But as long as you can remember it later or retrace your steps or things like that, there's definitely a difference from normal forgetting as we age and the beginnings of dementia. So if you go visit your parents and there's dust and they used to be a super neat freak. So that was my mom. She was always a neat freak and she had this house. She just started closing all the doors and wouldn't go in there. And there were other things. And driving is another huge issue. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but pay attention to your parents. Denial is a huge thing from from the kids and from the parents and from the relatives. Like you'll even say one kid is dealing with, they're like, oh my gosh, things are crazy. Like I talked to mom on the phone yesterday and she was absolutely fine. Well, it's the brain. It's not an on-off switch. It's like they come and they go and they're coherent and they're not, or they do weird things. There are similarities, but everybody's different. So, leaving the pot on the stove or getting lost or forgetting how to turn on the VCR. Like, I mean, that's me normally, but there's so much to it. So, but just pay attention, communicate, and then start having these conversations around everything related to elder care. Because you have to plan for care. Like there's all these retirement seminars, like plan for retirement. You're going to play golf and travel the world. Well, no, you need to plan for care because 75% of us are going to need care. And the average cost of care for someone with dementia is $300,000 private pay.
Oh my God.
Oof.
Yeah, and we already surpassed that. And my mom could live another decade.
Oh my God.
Wow. That is a sobering
Well,
fact.
now I'm depressed.
Well,
sorry. Eat chocolate. Eat chocolate.
There was something in there that you just said too. It reminded me. So Steve and I took a walk through the neighborhood. The weather's beautiful here right now. We took a walk just before we came in to do this interview. And on our way in, our neighbor, who has been on the show, he's been on the guest on the show, was pulling out. And we were talking to him because he was in a different car. Hey, did you get a new car? No, I'm actually getting the oil change for my dad, who probably shouldn't be driving.
No.
There's
absolutely shouldn't be
dementia
driving
there. And then he starts to tell us this story that just happened related to, speaking of like forgetting to like turn things off. There was a whole incident over at his parents' house where there was like a car that they had to move and there was a tiller.
There was a tiller involved.
And his dad forgot to like turn the tiller off.
He didn't turn the tiller off,
like,
and it went right into the car.
Corey thought he was stopping it. Like a whole thing. And I think just simple things like that too, right? Like the executive function just isn't working the way that it normally does. Yeah.
Right. Running into the garage. And
yes.
I mean, I've got so many stories, not from just me, but from everybody. I mean, it's so common. And then also you need to pay attention because dad might be covering for mom or mom might be covering for dad.
Yes.
And then one dies of a heart attack and they're like, oh my gosh, mom has lost it. And how come we didn't know? Because dad was covering.
Not so much even covering for someone else, but I find too that I think like every now and then I think my mom covers for herself.
Oh, they get really
really
good
well.
at just deflecting. That's no big deal.
Yeah.
Yep.
No. It's a thing where you can, when they know they're being evaluated, they can muster up that part of the brain that's like, I'm fine. I mean, I had the psychiatrist in the hospital evaluating my mom and he's like, oh, she's fine. Why is she here? What's going on? And so then I had to fax all the letters and send all the documents because she had worked in a hospital. She knew to throw around the HIPAA word. She knew what to say, what to do. Like she had the psychiatrist fooled. And I'm like, okay. So, we went through a lot.
I have to have just a squirrel moment here. I'm looking at George. I'm going to have a squirrel moment because I know this is a podcast, which means audio only, and you cannot see the looks across the table between me and Steve. But Nicole, just now when you mentioned something about backing into the garage.
Yep.
Steve is like not rolling his eyes at me, but looking at me like, oh, well, you don't even have to have dementia to do that. I have not backed into the garage. I did, however, one time
back out of the
garage and straight into my mom's car back when my mom was driving. Because literally, like, she had just come to the house. She sat down in the living room.
You just plowed out of the garage and plowed right into her car.
A quick errand, and I totally was not thinking about the fact that, of course, she had just pulled into the driveway.
Well, that's habit. That's
right?
habit. Free pass.
Don't try to cover for her, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah. No, I'm guilty of that kind of stuff too, so I have to cover because
I
solidarity.
Appreciate that. Thank you, because Steve was totally giving me the look across the microphones on that one. So.
All right, Nicole, where can people find more about you and about your book?
So I have a website and it's njsmithbooks.com.
njsmithbooks.com. We will put that in the show notes.
Yeah, I've only written one book, but I'm thinking about book 2 as where I can be of more help to people.
Okay.
But so let me just say really quick, my book is a part memoir, part resource. So it talks about our story and everything that we went through and why you need to get all this stuff done so you don't go through this. And also just like there was all these different aspects, different states, different issues, different challenges, different resources. So that I tried to put it all into like a condensed version of the 36-hour day. So you don't have to carry a brick around with you.
Yeah. Well, but I love that though. I mean, that's really what Steve and I are doing here, right? Like it is part our stories with our moms, but also we are trying to sprinkle in here's where you can get some help. Here are some resources. And of course, that's why we talk to folks like you, Nicole, like people who have way more information than we do and can share that with people so that, again, they don't feel like they're alone and that they've got support.
Well, and I think the best thing about podcasts is if you're waking up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat and you don't know what to do, you can calm yourself with a podcast. Like the Daughterhood has a podcast also. So I listen to that, or I listen to other related ones, Dr. Andrew Weil, Body of Wonder, or different things. He had a whole thing on burial, and now you can have green burial. So, I mean, I'm thinking ahead, like we're not close to burial, but I'm starting to think ahead about, cremation, donation, burial, all that stuff.
And we should probably do an episode on that. My mother actually recently went through the whole planning process of what she wanted, and it was interesting hearing what she came up with. We'll talk about that on another episode, but for the most part, not all that difficult, but there were a couple of specific things like, well, she wants butterflies released at her gravesite.
Great.
It's just so
just
not
random.
Like your mom.
It's random.
Really
random.
I mean,
I'm
listen,
thinking, okay,
if she
well,
wants
what happens
butterflies,
if you
we'll figure it out. But
what happens if you die in January? We're going to release those things and they'll die immediately.
You can order them. You can order them from somewhere.
Well, yeah, we can order them and they'll die immediately the minute I let them out of the box.
All right, circle of life and all. I don't know.
We can have, fake butterflies maybe. I don't know.
Go to Michael's.
Go to Michael's,
Right.
Get the fake butterflies, just toss them in the air and say, okay, we're done.
And then we'll pick them up because we can't litter.
Right, of course. All right, Nicole Smith, author of Diagnosis Dementia, Your Guide for Elder Care Planning and Crisis Management. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It's really fun to talk to you guys. Thank you.
Thanks,
right.
Nicole. Take care.
And if anyone would like to get in touch with us, for all of our new listeners who found out about through the AARP magazine with Rob Lowe on the cover.
My bestie.
Jennifer's
my new
bestie, right.
Except for my actual real bestie, Becky, but he's like my other bestie.
And I'd like to think I'm one of your besties.
Well, yes, that's a given.
Yeah, whatever.
Of course, that's a given.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, if you'd like to reach out to us, we love questions, we love comments, and another thing we love is if somebody just tells us, how's your mom? How's your dad? How's your elderly loved one? Just send us those stories about how they're doing. You can email us at caregivinggenxstyle@gmail.com. You can send us a text or leave a voicemail at 804-723-1221. We're on Twitter. The handle is at Gen X Caregiving. We're on Blue Sky. The handle is also at Gen X Caregiving. And we're also on Facebook, which is the place we post the most. If you want to interact, that's where we're going to be. Just go to the show notes and click the link, and you will find us there. We hope to hear from you soon in all of those many ways. Have a great day.
Good night, everyone.